Hi everyone, John Poker Chip Friedberg here with another episode of Stacking Chips, your strategy source for the 2007 World Series of Poker, the Bellagio Cup, and the dozens of other events going on right here in lovely Las Vegas. Well, let's see, I played in Day 1C of the World Series main event, the third starting day, and it went terribly for me. It was just one of those tournaments where if something could have gone wrong, it went wrong, and that's really frustrating, especially in the biggest event of the year. This is a fourth year in a row when I've just ran terribly bad in the main event. I ended up lasting about 5 hours or so. I made it past the second break. At the end of the second, or during the second break, I only had about 6,500 in chips, and I lasted about 45 minutes after that. So there are really three key hands that I played in the main event, and I'm going to talk about those, and they're really simple, straightforward. I'd say two of them were really cooler hands, and then one of them was really kind of a bad beat. The first hand, I hovered around even. I was up to about 22,000 in chips right away, starting from 20, and then I blinded down to about 20K, and I pick up pocket eights. I make a raise. It's folded to the big blind who calls, and I think at the time the blinds were probably 1 in 200 or maybe even 5,000. No, we started at 5,000. So the blinds are 1 in 200. I make a raise to 600. He calls with I had pocket eights. He called from the big blind. The flop came, I think, Jack 8-6 with one diamond, and he checked to me. I bet, and he called. The turn came a king of diamonds. He checked to me. I bet. He called. And then the river comes another diamond. He fires out. And I don't remember exactly what the river card. I know it was a diamond, but I really didn't put him on a flush there because I didn't think he would have caught runner on me. I made a healthy size bet on the flop, trying to look weak actually, hoping he would make a move. But turned out he had the 10-6 of diamonds. He flopped bottom pair with a backdoor flush draw, and he caught diamond to beat me. So that cost me a fair amount of chips. And then next hand, the guy to my immediate right was making a lot of raises. He was bringing in for a raise probably 4 hands every round. So there was one hand where he, of course, made a raise to 600. I looked down at the ace-king. I wasn't suited, but whatever. I had an ace-king, and I think I was on the cutoff. I just called. I wanted to play him in position with an ace-king. And everyone else folded. The flop comes ace-10-10. He checks to me, and I check also. Turn comes a brick, like maybe a 4. He checks again, and I go ahead and bet this time. And he raises me. He check-raised me, and I thought, you know what? I really don't. I thought he was making a move. I honestly thought he had an ace-queen or maybe an ace-jack, but he thought I was weak, so he was trying to trap me for the ace. Anyway, long story short, he check-raised me. I paid him off. River came. He made a small bet. I called. He had 9-10. He flopped trips. So I kind of got cooler that hand. That left me with like 7,000, blinded down to 6,500 at the next level. And then my very last hand, I'm on the button, and it's folded around to the cutoff. Now we're playing 2 and 400 blinds with a quarter or $50 ante, I think. And it's folded around to the cutoff. He makes it 1,200. I look down at 2 queens. I go all in for 6,500 or 7,000 or whatever I have. And the small blind reshoves all in for about 15 or 20,000. And so I know I'm in trouble there. I wasn't too worried about the cutoff. Of course, the cutoff folds. I show my queens. The other guy shows pocket kings. And I never improved to win the hand. So that knocked me out around 5 o'clock yesterday. And I was pretty frustrated, but, that was on Sunday. But, that's just how it goes. Sometimes in poker, if it's not your day, it's just really not your day. And all you can do is play well. And that's what I did yesterday. And unfortunately, things didn't go my way. But I do want to talk a little bit about how weak the field is in the main event. There were 2 hands that I'm going to talk about, and both of them were between the same 2 players. And they were both at my table. I mean, first of all, I didn't recognize anybody at my table, and they weren't internet players. These are just, I don't have any idea where these people come up with $10,000 to buy into a main event sometimes. So there's one hand where guy had a jack queen and the board was 9-10 king, rag, no pair on the board, no flush draw, nothing. This is in the first level. On the river card, the guy with the nuts bets 500, and the guy to his left raises to 1,500, and the guy with the nuts, who of course keeps looking at his cards like that. I love it when people do that and want to show you their cards, but he looks at his cards about 5 more times and just calls 1,000 more with the freaking nuts. He can't be beat. And so he turns over Jack Queen. The other guy turns over 2 pair, but didn't see that the other guy had a straight. And so that's one example of how badly the players are here. This guy just calls with the nuts. I think that might even be a penalty. If I remember hearing about some rule where if you don't raise the nuts, then that's a penalty, or if you just call with the nuts or something and it's not on your chip. Anyway, so that was one funny part of the story. The second funny part is that the guy with the who had the 2 pair didn't even realize that this guy had the nuts and didn't understand what. It didn't even cross his mind as to why this guy didn't re-raise him, and no one else at the table even made a comment or made a funny look or acted like they were confused about why this guy didn't re-raise with the nuts. Nobody even noticed it. That's how bad the 2 players that were in the hand were, and that's how bad all the other guys at the table were. They just didn't notice it, and they didn't think there was anything wrong with that. So, of course, I didn't want to mention it because I don't want to call attention to it. I wanted to sort of keep that in my own arsenal. Anyway, a little while later, I'm at the same table, the same 2 players. One guy raises to, I think now we're playing 2 and 400 blinds. One guy raises to, the guy who had the nuts in this last hand I was talking about, he raises to 1,200, and the guy to his immediate left, who was also in the hand with him last time, re-raises, of course, the mini raise to 2,400. It's folded around, the guy calls another 1,200. The flop comes King, Queen, 5. The first raiser checks, other guy bets, he calls. The turn card comes a Jack. Check, bet, call. Okay? River card is like a deuce or something. No flush on the board. The board does not pair. So there's Jack, Queen, King, and then 2 other random cards, maybe a 5 and a 3. Okay, the river card, it goes check, check. They both turn over their cards. One guy has pocket queens, he flopped a set of queens. Other guy has pocket kings, he flopped a set of kings. And these guys, like, not only in a million years I would have gone broke with the 2 queens every single time in that spot. I would have doubled up with the 2 kings every single time in that spot. The fact that the queens raised and just, the kings made a minimum re-raise, and then the flop, it was check, bet, call, and turn was check, bet, call, and river was check, check. I don't know what the set of kings was scared of. Was he scared of an ace-10, a 9-10? Those are the only 2 hands that beat him. And that just goes to show how low the level of skill is in some of these players and why there's so much dead money. I mean, if I have a set in that situation, whether it's bottom set or top set, I think I'm golden, and I'm going to go broke there, 99 times out of 100 if I have the smaller set. Of course, that depends on who I'm up against and how the hand plays out, but in that particular situation, they absolutely should have had all their chips in the pot. Instead, they only had like maybe 4,000 each when they both had 30K stacks. So I thought that was funny. Anyway, so my guest on the show today is another very successful online player who's transitioned into live poker, and in my opinion, he is one of the best poker players in the world, not only online but live. I think he truly is up there in the very top percentile of players, up there with the Phil Ivies and the Granos and those guys. He's had remarkable results. In 2006 in the 5 Diamond at Bellagio, he had 4 final tables, 3 prelims, and the main event. And he continues to do so well in so many events. So that said, let's bring him on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Justin Bonomo. Justin, thanks for coming on the show, man. It's glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So you and I, unfortunately, both got knocked out of the main event already. And what happened to you? What's your story?
My table was great. Everyone was just loose and passive. I doubled up to 40,000 chips early on. I took 2 pretty bad beats, knocked me down to 20,000, rebuilt back to 40,000, then took 2 more terrible beats and was just short stacked after that. Out of the 4 suckouts that happened to me, the smallest one was a 12K pot. So
oh, really? Wow.
Really nothing you can do when that happens.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And these fields they're so easy. I was just saying in my intro, the table I was at, the players are so bad. One player literally made with the nuts on the river, and having to play both cards in his hand. He had a Jack Queen in his hand, and there was a 9-10 king on the board, no pair, no flush draw, and he had bet five. This is on the first level. He bet 500 on the river. Another guy raised him another 1,000, and he just called.
Wow.
I mean, the level of play is so bad. So it's unfortunate in these tournaments with so much dead money in there and so much money to win that you and I both sort of took some bad beats. But that's poker. You'll recover, I'll recover, and we'll both move on to the next tournaments. Speaking of which, tomorrow, actually, or today, rather, is the, or tomorrow, I don't know, but the main event of the Bellagio Cup starts real soon, the $10,000 buy-in,
Yep.
which you were telling me that you're playing in.
Yeah, I'm playing the first day. I'm not sure what kind of field to expect. Like, on one hand, there weren't many satellites, so you'd think tough players. On the other hand, a lot of tough players are still in the main event, so it might be a really small turnout. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, we'll see. What's your preference in these big events? Would you rather go into a 10K buy-in tournament with all pros and 150 players, or would you rather go in with lots of dead money and 2,000 players? Or I guess more realistically, 700 to 800 players.
I mean, I wish it could be the main event every day. You just play 6,300 of the worst players. So I'll always take the bigger fields.
Okay, but you still feel equally as comfortable going into a field that's all pros with, say, 150, 200 players as you would, any other event?
I'm confident enough in my game that I know I'll be a winning player in the long run, but obviously my equity is going to be a lot smaller against a tougher field.
Right. Excuse me. Well, you've actually had a lot of success in live poker, and of course you've had a phenomenal background in the online world. Everyone knows you as Online Z Justin, and you've had a ton of success. You come into the online world, and I think you told me you were actually the youngest player to ever make a TV final table.
I was the first teenager ever to make a TV final table. Yeah.
And that was over in Europe?
Yeah, it was the European Poker Tour, the stop in Deauville.
And what did you end up finishing in that tournament?
I finished fourth. I think there were like 250 players in the field, including 8 Americans. The final 4 was all American. So I actually made some good friends in that, Carl Olson and Brandon Schaefer. They were also both in the top 4.
Colson is actually doing really well in the main event.
Yeah, he had 200K after the first day. He's a really, really good player.
Very solid player. Very solid. So you went on, I think it was the 5 Diamond last year in 2006. You had, was it 4 final tables, including the main event, the 10 or 15K buy-in main event?
Yeah, I played 8 tournaments there total, and I final tabled 4 of them.
So you've obviously, like I said, you've had a ton of success in the online world, and you have transitioned into live poker extremely well. Do you find that it was much of a challenge for you, or have you just sort of been, I guess, a natural, so to speak, at making that transition?
It's never really a challenge for me. I had both. There's really 2 different skill sets that you need. One is the technical game, which obviously I learned online. The other is a live game, just being good against live players. And I started playing Magic the Gathering when I was 8. I know it sounds dorky, but it was still the competitive heads-up atmosphere, and I really learned, kind of like tells. They're not really the same, but the same skills transfer over.
Well, the game, I hear a lot of people talking about Magic, especially a lot of the online players, and unfortunately, the strategy game in my childhood was more like Dungeons and Dragons. I had never even heard of Magic the Gathering until this past January when we were in the Bahamas and you were playing with Ruthless and a bunch of other guys.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of people that were really good in Magic have gone on into poker. I guess there's a lot of parallels, sort of like chess and backgammon and other strategy games.
I mean, you can come from basically any strategy game. Just going through the motions of learning a strategy game will really help you for your second game.
So, in my opinion, you possess just like a really incredible just knack for the game of poker. I put you up in the very top tier of players, up there with just the best of the best, and I think you've proven yourself. It seems like you have such a high percentage of the tournaments you play in, you just have big finishes. And I think most players in the game, at least certainly those that recognize you, and you're getting a lot of exposure right now, also feel the same. You're very frequently talked about as being one of the best. I'm just curious, and I know our viewers are curious, what is it that you do to improve your game? What sort of, do you take notes? Do you go back and review hand histories? Are you constantly reading books? Are you constantly talking to friends? What exactly is it that you do that makes you so good and allows you to sort of stay at the forefront of the game?
Well, this is something I learned from Magic. It's all about setting up a think tank. If you're trying to learn the game by yourself, starting from scratch, it'll take you years to even become decent. I had the good fortune of meeting a lot of the best internet players when I first started playing, and we discussed hands with each other. And I would suck today if it wasn't for people like Ozzy87 that I discussed hands with every single day. And as long as you're constantly learning and constantly checking your game against players that are equal or better than you, then you'll always be improving your game.
And when you play online, do you use some of the software analytical tools?
Well, I use Poker Tracker, and I use Poker Stove and some other stuff like that. Not when I'm playing. Just I'm kind of a game theory dork, and I kind of look at situations using those programs a lot.
So when you come into a live game setting, do you consider yourself to have just a remarkable memory? I mean, are you very quick to pick up on tells for your opponents? I mean, your results... Sorry, my voice is giving me trouble. But your results in the live world are so impressive. Obviously, you're not using any sort of, statistical tools to help you there. So, I mean, do you have any sort of, advanced memory skills or pattern recognition skills or people reading skills that have also led to your success in the game?
In terms of specific memory recall, that's actually one of the biggest weaknesses in my game. But one thing that I'm very good at is I can sit down at a table, look at a player, and 9 times out of 10, before they even play a hand, I can tell you how they're going to play just by stereotyping them. And that's a skill that's just incredibly useful in tournaments. You're playing against new players all the time, and if you can figure out how they're going to play quickly, it just really helps you. I
agree. In fact, in one of my previous episodes, I was answering some email questions, and one person sent me an email asking, is it safe to categorize players in a place like Tunica versus London versus California? And I said, absolutely. You can definitely stereotype players. Asians tend to play a certain way. Europeans tend to play a certain way. In the Deep South, they play a certain way. And do you agree with that as well? Is that what you're saying? And
yeah, absolutely.
Part of your stereotyping process?
I think a lot of those regions have 2 different types of players. Like Asians, for example, the older Asians play very differently from the younger Asians, but the stereotypes definitely hold true a huge % of the time.
So where do you go from here? You're out of the main event. You're starting the Bellagio Cup, and then what should we look for in the next 6 to 12 months from you?
Well, for the next 3 months, basically, I have to decide if I want to play all the American tournaments or all the European tournaments. There's the EWSOP, which is kind of tempting. The fact that they're giving out bracelets will probably be enough to draw me to Europe for a bunch of those tournaments.
And what is it that you're considering between the WPT events here and the EPT events overseas?
Well, I always prefer WPT events over anything except for World Series events. So it's either play some World Series events and some smaller events in Europe, or play only WPTs here.
And have you played many EPT events?
The first season I played either 4 or 5 of them, but I haven't played any since then.
Okay, I've yet to play an EPT event, but this year I'm looking forward to playing in at least the Monte Carlo Millions, and hopefully some others. So I'm sure I will see you at some of these bigger events. Of course, I'll see you at a lot of the World Poker Tour events coming up, and perhaps even the World Series of Poker Europe. I haven't looked into that one yet, but I hear the main event there is $20,000. Should be a nice prize pool, and of course, competing for bracelets is always a good thing as well.
Yeah, and I think there's 3 events. There's a pot limit Omaha, a horse, and then the no limit. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
So it's a good change from the American nothing but no limit style.
Mm-hmm. Right. Awesome. Well, Justin, thanks again for coming on the show. It's great to have you here. Well, that's it for today's episode of Stacking Chips. Make sure to tune in tomorrow and throughout the rest of the World Series for more strategy talk, discussion, interviews, and more right here on Card Player TV. And keep those emails coming in to stackingchips@cardplayer.com. From John Poker Trip Friedberg
and Justin Bonomo,
we're out of here. Good luck, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.